Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How to Do Drugs podcast. I am your host, Aaliyah Janine, and today I have my very good friend whom I've known for quite some time now, Vince, aka Vince.
Happy to be here.
You're like happy to be here. Now, how you and I met was I want to say because I was 30 and you were 20, and we were in a bar in Hollywood called Crest, if I remember correctly. It was on the rooftop of Crest. And because you're 6'4", and like I remember you had like longer hair. Your hair was a little bit longer. And mainly just because you were 6'4" and had facial hair, I'm like, oh, he's totally old enough to be in this club.
Well,
And you
let's start off in that my fake ID said I was 21. So for the sake of the story, we can say I was 21.
Yes, yes. But how I found out that you weren't 21 is because we went out, well, we met at Crest, and then we got each other's numbers or whatever, and then you went to take me to see Steel Panther. Remember? And you're like, oh, I know people, that work at the Key Club or whatever. And then when we were up getting our IDs checked, you were like whispering to the door guy, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then you had like a
Pulling string.
big X put on your hand, and I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And you're like, oh, well, I mean, because it's technically I'm not 21 yet. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going out with someone so much younger than me, like not even legal to drink. Yeah, so that's how we met. Steel Panther was amazing though.
Great show. Strongly recommend to if
Yes,
anyone hasn't seen them.
definitely go see Steel Panther live. And you were turning 21. I think it was within a couple of months anyway, but it was still like it was
I
still
was
real.
game. I was game.
Yeah. It was still very funny. But we have been friends for years. You were actually my date for the AVN Awards one year.
First, you broke my AVN cherry, and I think it's fair to say I've been to how many since then now? 5.
All of them
So
since
you
then, I
create you
think.
created a monster.
Like you became buddies with like Tony, the owner of AVN and stuff.
And let me also put it this way. I think at the time I was really involved in DJing. That AVN show you took me to resulted in my first DJ gig where I did Ron Jeremy's New Year's Eve party.
That's amazing. That is yeah, it's like I left the industry and all of a sudden you started like working, getting more acclimated in it, so to speak. Don't you like you manage some models and stuff for OnlyFans right now? You do some stuff for
That's what I'm in, yeah, that's what I'm into right now. Obviously, the OnlyFans thing's pretty popular. We're in a time now where we can all shoot our own porn, which you're probably not a big fan of,
I'm so
and
over it. I'm like, I've already did that
distribute
before.
it how we see fit. But
Yeah.
at least people are finally getting paid for it, so that's a plus.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely wish that if OnlyFans was around when I was doing it, yeah, definitely. I probably would have stayed in it for a lot
Yeah, we
longer. I
wouldn't
have
even be on this podcast.
probably not. I mean, oh my God, imagine the possibilities. Where would I be now? Would I still be doing drugs? Absolutely.
That never changes.
That never changes. I'm trying to remember. If you and I know we used to get drunk. We used to get very, very intoxicated, which was always fun. But I don't remember if we've ever actually done any drugs together.
I think there was probably some blow mixed in there at some point. No,
Yeah, okay, yeah, maybe. But I wasn't doing a lot of blow when I lived in LA. What maybe
no,
at the AVN Awards did we do
no. Our,
some?
our 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 love was real. It wasn't based on drugs.
Love was real. I do remember when we snuck into the what was it, the Standard or the Highland something. We snuck into one of the hotel pools in Hollywood.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was and had sex in the pool. That was fun.
Good
Yeah.
time.
You're like good times. I'm like, yeah, no, but we weren't on drugs then either. Did we ever do? See, this is the problem when you do a lot of drugs. It's like, wait, what drugs did I do with you?
I mean, I
I
guess if we're gonna talk all things drugs, alcohol and weed can be classified as drugs to some people, and we did do our fair share of both of those. I remember laying on
yeah.
on what you qualified as a bed in your Hollywood apartment.
When I
Plenty,
first
plenty
moved
amount, plenty amounts of weed. Just for the viewers, so that we can illustrate this picture. It was a
Yes.
mattress. It was a mattress that was so flimsy that when you laid on it, my butt was hitting the hard floor. But it
It was
wasn't
a
a blow
blow
mat.
up. It was a blow
It
up.
was like a real mattress. Yeah.
No, it was that because I had just got in the apartment because I was staying with my friend Cassidy who
Yeah.
lived like 2 blocks down, and I found an apartment 2 blocks, I think, on Cherokee. And yeah, I just moved in and I was so excited to like have sex. But yeah, it was like a blow up. It was barely a blow up mattress. And we just had a bunch of blankets on the floor. Oh, it was good times.
Yeah,
I just
we were living the crackhead vibes without doing the crack.
we really were. Yeah, that apartment, that was fun. I basically like started my whole life over in that apartment, and then I moved to North Hollywood where I got a house and like grew up a
Yeah,
little bit. But
yeah,
yeah, I didn't have a lot when I didn't like watch TV and stuff when I was in Hollywood, but I didn't even do that many drugs either. It's like surprisingly, like the cocaine that I did a couple of times was really, really good, obviously. But yeah, because I was always afraid of the stigma of like doing porn and like partying all the time. Like I didn't want to be seen as that. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And especially in that industry. But now that I think about it, I wasted a lot of good times to do like good blow. Like I just passed it up because I was worried about social stigma.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, we can get into it later, but I think that, you know, blow and alcohol are normally the drugs that people kind of first start with when they're younger and a little more insecure. But there's quite a
Yeah.
selection.
Is that well, because like you grew up in California, you're a Cali boy, and especially around Hollywood, because when I was growing up, it was more like we did more like alcohol and like mushrooms and acid. Where in some place like in LA, I would definitely see like alcohol and coke being like the go-to. Because there it's like that's like the party drug. That's like the cool drug that like all the stars or whatever that you think that they're doing, and they most definitely are most of the time. Um, so growing up, like, so was cocaine like the first drug you did? Like, obviously alcohol and weed, but no, what was like the first drug that you ever tried?
Well, I guess I should first off start off by saying my early career, when I say career, kind of
Mhm.
baseball was what I
Yes.
was doing in high school all the way up until almost the time I met you.
Hmm.
So that really prevented me from getting into drugs at that
Hmm.
time. You know, when you're working towards something physical, whether
Hmm.
it be an athlete, it's pretty easy to not choose things that slow your body down. You
Yeah.
know,
Did you ever get into
but yeah,
steroids or anything?
no, because I was a pitcher, so you know, at that age, it was more about flexibility,
Yeah.
throwing the ball faster. It wasn't a football scenario where, you know, you're trying to get bigger to achieve a certain.
Hmm.
And I'm a big guy as it is, so like
Yeah.
that temptation never hit me. You know, once baseball stopped, then I started, you know, dabbling in the first steps, right? Like
Yeah.
graduating from beer to hard liquor. You know, weed was obviously a good gateway drug for me.
Hmm.
It was, you know, something easy to make that stepping stone. I think my other than the blow that we would do at clubs
Hmm.
together, and like, you know, you get that occasional bump in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Outside of that, my first real drug experience was a major laser concert. It was also my first rave. So
Okay.
my friends took me to my first rave. God, this was 2000, maybe 2006, 2007.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was like 2008, I think. And yeah, they were like, here, take this ecstasy roll. I was like, what's it gonna do? They're like, don't worry about it. And I still follow this advice to anybody this day is, you know, if you're gonna take something, know your dosage, know what you're doing, but also take it and forget about it. That's exactly what I did. I took it and then I like 10 minutes later, forgot I even took it. And before
Mhm.
you know it, 30 to 40 minutes later, I'm like rolling around in the grass, like playing with an invisible ball, being like, this is the greatest thing I've ever had in my life. So,
Yeah,
uh,
also make sure you're with good people when you're
yeah.
doing
And
that stuff.
those were my best friends at the time. So like,
Yeah.
I had that trust, I had that circle of friends. So
Yeah, and you're in a, like, safe area and stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of people should definitely I remember the first time I ever did cocaine was at a rave, and I was with, a good group of friends or whatever. It's a lot different than doing ecstasy for the first time, which was also at a rave, but my first rave was in the 90s when they were still really
good time to rave. Good time to
yeah, when they were still underground and, Ticketmaster wasn't selling tickets to them. So you really didn't start doing drugs until you were older, until you were, like, in your 20s then and a
yeah.
little bit later on.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you think, is your favorite drug? Like, after you tried ecstasy, did you wanna try, like, more of them, or did, like, you, like, really like one and, like, maybe do it a little too much at a time?
I think my like what I've chosen to do over time has been indicative of my current situation, right?
Mhm,
So when I was young, like, and without going on too much off on a tangent, like I think we drink and do coke to really kind of get that liquid courage or that energy to do things. When you get older and you get more comfortable in your own skin and you start understanding who you are, other
mhm,
drugs that have more medicinal benefit become more appealing. So the
mhm,
drugs that are appealing to me today, I didn't even know existed before. I wasn't even
mhm.
interested in them before. um, and now I'm the type of person that will tell you, you know what, a bump of K is probably better than drinking all night. But I honestly believe that.
Mhm,
Everyone's enzymes in their body react differently. Like I think we as humans really like to look at everyone and be like, oh, that person's the same size as me. I'll just do what they do.
mhm.
And we all react differently to
Yeah,
drugs.
that's not a good
Yeah,
measurement.
it's not a good strategy, but it's kind of the strategy that everybody takes. They see their friends doing it, and they do it, and just me personally, like I react really bad to alcohol.
Mhm.
Like from a hangover perspective,
Yeah.
my body runs hot. I get really dehydrated overnight. Like a night of drinking tons and tons of beers will destroy me more than rolling the
Yeah.
next. You know.
Yeah, physically. Oh, especially now. Oh, wait until you hit your 40s, like 2 glasses of wine, it's like 2 weeks to recover. I'm like, "What is the matter with me?"
Yeah, exactly. And without going off on a political discussion, though, it's how we stigmatize drugs, which
Mhm,
causes us to think, oh, alcohol's fine, but these other drugs aren't. When maybe these other drugs have more of a medicinal benefit, they actually have more of a have a more positive impact on you.
mhm.
There's that Dr. Carl Hart
Yeah.
that wrote that book about how he does heroin, and heroin
Mhm.
makes him a better person. This is a scientist. He's a teacher. He's like,
Yeah. At
he
Columbia. Mhm. I
actually
know, I'm
knows
trying to get him on the
chemical
show. I
compounds.
want him on the show.
Yeah, yeah, he knows the chemical compounds and like the dosages and everything. And
Mhm,
it goes to show you how stigma plays a lot into what we think about drugs, because you know with the right dosage, with the right intent,
mhm.
I think that we should be free to experiment and use drugs how we see fit. Now, me personally, I can say that I have not always taken that advice, and I've not always
Of cour
thought that way. I've definitely been
Yeah.
reckless and careless with how I use drugs. But I think that when we look at what's your favorite drug or what you're doing, we
Mhm,
also have to look at, well, what do you currently what currently do you want out of life, and where are you currently with life, and
mhm.
how will that drug positively impact you? And if it's not going to positively impact you, then you know kick it.
Then maybe yeah, maybe
Yeah.
not do it. Yeah, well, that's a big factor when it comes with drug use is that, people automatically assume that we're doing copious amounts of all these things instead of just, like, micro dosing on mushrooms to help with, like, a little bit of depression or even K now, as you know, is being used to help with depression and stuff. I've tried K. a couple of times when I was younger. And I didn't like it. And like, obviously I wasn't doing little bumps. I would do like, a big fat line, and would actually make me feel like I was drunk a little bit. And then it would just make me feel really nauseous because I've
Mm.
never been good with downers. Like I've never really been good with those. Some people really like them though, but I know people have died of overdoses of ketamine and even like GHB and stuff like that. Yeah, but a lot of drugs have a lot of very good medicinal purposes. I mean, that's why like certain drugs were even created to help with specific things. But yeah, but the way it's, I guess it's hard to regulate, for the government to regulate these certain types of drugs and like how strong they can be, and so it's like a lot to figure out, but other countries have kind of already figured it out. Where they're just like, hey, people are going to do these drugs if we want them to or not, so at least like let's give them a space to, like, I forgot what country it was where they allow people to go in and like shoot up and stuff, so they give them clean needles and whatnot. Definitely not here. Oh God, I don't. That would take decades for that to happen in the United States, if
Well, it's like,
ever.
yeah, it's like, when, like, if someone's doing Molly or doing heroin, we view those people a lot differently than we view an alcoholic, right? Like
Hmm.
alcoholic, where we praise them for getting sober
Yeah.
and for putting it down, but other stronger, maybe more addictive drugs that are a little bit more dangerous. We
Hmm.
don't apply the same logic that we apply to drugs like alcohol. We just stigmatize them,
Hmm.
and stigmatize the people that use them.
Yeah, because alcohol is socially acceptable. It's like cigarette smoking. Cigarette smoking is a disgusting habit. Do I still do it? Absolutely. Why? Because it's socially acceptable. And if more people are doing it with my freaking addict, especially smoker's brain, I'm also going to want to smoke, even though I know I should.
Could you imagine if weed killed as many people as cigarettes per year? Like
Oh, yeah.
the stigma and hatred that would revamp against weed.
Yeah, that I mean, it's kind of already still like that. At least now
Yeah.
people are actually seeing, the medical benefits, and that now people that you would never think, they're like, "Oh, I really like CBD." It's like, yeah, no shit. We've been trying to tell you this basically for centuries, it seems
Yeah.
like, especially with stuff like hemp, where you can make everything from paper to clothing from this stuff. But because it was easy, and it was good for the environment, and you can't make that much money off of it, they're like, no, we can't use this stuff. It is interesting how they do that. So you have an OnlyFans, so like you do OnlyFans stuff now. Do you think how do you feel about the stigma between like sex work and working with sex workers and drug use within the sex worker community?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily tie those together, or tie those together any more than I would tie, someone who does drugs and then goes and does their Wall Street job.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
if you're gonna stigmatize someone for having sex on camera and being high on Molly, you also have to stigmatize your Wall Street banker that racks up lines of Adderall or Coke on his desk to do his job.
Mhm.
Uh,
Exactly. Oh, that's such a good answer, but we don't do that.
No, we don't. Of course, we don't do that because
No.
because sex is more detrimental to our society than, say, kids playing video games where they stab and kill people.
Yeah.
But God forbid if those same kids saw a nipple or something. We have to shun all of that. But as far as violence or actually things that negatively impact society, it's terrible.
Yeah. There's also the thing too, because there's so many like legalized drugs that you mentioned, Adderall, and then you also have stuff like Xanax. So you have a lot of these people who put down, like sex workers or someone who's a heroin addict or former, recovering heroin addict and stuff like that. But they're going and taking like popping 2 Xanax a day and thinking that they're completely different or even that they're better than these people because it was like, oh, well, it was given to me by my doctor. So I'm supposed to take this, where you have to take it because you're a dirty addict. But it's like, if we take that prescription away from you, all of a sudden you're freaking the fuck out because you need another fix. It
By
is,
the way, that's how our politicians are getting high. is
Yeah.
everything's a prescription drug
Mhm.
that's allowed, you know.
Mhm.
So it's the same shit. It's just one's covering their tracks legally and one's not.
Yeah, I remember my father telling me because he's a big drug addict. He loves his drugs, and when they came out with pills like Oxy and especially Xanax and Adderall, he's like, I don't have to shoot any up anymore. They have pills for that now. It was
That
like,
the effects of morphine are almost identical to that of heroin. You know,
yeah, yeah.
anybody anybody that's had surgery and got a morphine drip can probably understands the effects of heroin. Now, I personally have never tried heroin before, um,
Yeah.
but it's if you look into the long history of things like OxyContin and whatnot, like we've known that these drugs and compounds have been addictive since the 1911,
Mhm.
the early almost a century, if not a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, but it all comes down to pharma being able to monetize it, and then once they're able to monetize it, they're able to lobby for it, and then they're able to pass the blame of deaths and addiction off to street drugs or drugs
Mhm.
that affect poor people, not
Mhm.
drugs that actually not the actual compound of the drug or what's actually happening.
Yeah, and they have fentanyl now, and a lot of people are dying from overdoses because I guess it's cheaper and it's easier to get for some reason, and so they're mixing it in with the heroin, and then people are just dropping like flies with that. Yeah, I've talked about
Which
it.
the problem would be solved if heroin was regulated and legal.
Yeah, I mean, well, what a lot of drugs would be like that. I mean, because they used to sell, like they used to, you see the ads for like cocaine to help with like a child's toothache, and it does because it knocks the fuck out of your mouth. And so
Gummies.
they, yeah, so they used to have a lot of these drugs were legal until they realized, people were getting. I mean, didn't Coca-Cola used to put cocaine? Like, didn't they have cocaine in Coca-Cola for a while until they got in trouble for that? Um, so yeah, so they had it legal for a little while. I think even stuff like LSD before they really knew what it was. And they're like, oh, people, we can't have people doing this. And it's only and I do think it is obviously because people can't make money off of it, but it's also like it is a control thing. It's definitely like that. A lot of it has to do with religion too. Although we like to think in America that we have separation of church and state, which clearly we do not, because every politician is always mentioning a god, some god, whatever god, constantly. So a lot of it does have to do with that, where it's like, oh, it's almost like blasphemous if you're doing drugs. Are you a religious person?
Well, as someone that comes from an Italian family, my religion is almost it's almost like an arranged marriage. You're forced to get you're it's an arranged religion, if you will. I was forced to go through the confirmation and all the
Hmm.
steps to be Catholic, but I'm probably one of the few people on this earth that are confirmed a confirmed Catholic atheist.
No, I would be the first because I'm older than you. But yeah, I'm also was raised Catholic, not Italian Catholic, but Irish Catholic, which they're both horrible Catholics. Just the worst of the Catholics, to be perfectly honest. Um, do you
But you know
think
what's
like
what's
go ahead?
interesting about what you said, and we don't have to go too deep into this, but it's like when you look at things like LSD and outline LSD, and this is just my
Hmm.
own opinion and thought process, but is LSD is not really it's not monetizable that well, like
No.
unless you're like it's not you're not going to be able to make a lot of money off of hits of acid. You don't do that much of it. If you look at the drugs that we've been able to monetize and legalize, it's the drugs
Mhm.
that require people to do a lot of them to get high. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
pills, alcohol, all these things that that they can sell you a lot of.
Mhm. Yeah, because you're not buying like
Those
when
things
you
are
go.
the first ones to get legalized, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because when you're going, at least when I was buying acid, I mean, I still buy acid, but now I buy it in larger quantities. But normally it was
Buy in
like five.
bulk.
Yeah, normally it was $5 a hit. You know what I mean? Like it maybe $10 if it was something really, really good, but I've never paid more than $10 for a hit of acid. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're not.
that'll last you 8 hours. Can you imagine if
Yeah.
everyone at the bar just got one hit of acid for $5, and then they were good for the rest of the night? No one would make any fucking money.
No one would make any money. You may have one beer. I remember, yeah, because sometimes I'll be drinking while, I'm on acid, but it won't be a lot at all. Normally it's water. Or I want like fruit punch or something ridiculous. You get very specific with the things that you put in. Well, you put in your body when you're on acid. I really like candy, like Starbursts and stuff like that. But that's just me. I could eat it. Can you eat on acid? Like I could totally like I could eat. I'll eat pasta. Like if I'm hungry, I could eat on almost any drug, even Coke. Can you eat on acid or anything when you're on anything?
I can do anything on acid.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Steve Jobs can start Apple on acid, I can do anything on acid.
You can do anything on acid. I am very well versed in being a normal member of society while on acid. A lot of people are kind of like freaked out by that. And I'm like, it's just acid, man. It's not that big of a deal. When was the
Yeah,
first time that you ever did acid?
Coachella.
Coachella.
Yeah, Coachella 2000. I mean, God knows the year anymore, but it was so long ago that Benny Benassi or Dead Mouse was opening for Benny Benassi. Like if you can imagine that, like Dead Mouse was a nobody with his helmet and his light up helmet and his cube shit, and he was
Hmm.
opening for the holy god of Benny Benassi. So that's how long ago it was.
And you know what's funny is that I don't think I've even heard of Benny Benassi, but I have heard of Dead Mouse. I don't know if I really heard any of their music. It is kind of true.
Never gonna push me and then just touch me till you
Yep, I know
get
that one.
like that's the Benny Benassi song.
Oh, okay. Well, then
Yeah,
I know that song. Yes.
yeah.
um, I think it is kind of true that once you actually stop doing like a lot of drugs, like techno music doesn't sound the same. Because I try listen to, and maybe it's just because it's different. Like I have 90s like raver music, so it's like that Chicago house music and then I used to listen to like New York DJ like Breaking Bones, and I really liked like Danny the Wild Child, who was like a drum and bass or jungle. So I don't even know what the fuck they have now, but there's been a couple of times I went out and I'm just like, oh, I definitely need ecstasy to listen to whatever this is. Like, what is happening? It's very funny. So you like to go to all of these, like you go to Coachella, you go to raves. I believe you went to Burning Man, if I'm not mistaken. So when you go into these places, is this the type of scenario where you're just like microdosing, or is this where you're kind of like indulging a little bit more?
Indulging.
Indulging.
I don't think I've ever microdosed at something of that high energy or high octane.
Yeah.
Um, I've probably done more drugs at Burning Man than like most people have done in their entire lifetime. Like,
Because
uh,
that's like a camping thing, right? Like you're out there for a couple of days, if I'm not mistaken.
the longest I've been out at Burning Man is 17 days.
How long is fucking Burning Man?
10 days.
10 days? And you were
Yeah,
there for
so I ran a camp up there, and when you build and you show up early and
hmm
you build this infrastructure, your listeners will probably know about Burning Man, so I won't go too much into it. But
hmm
Burning Man's literally a city, so it's not a festival. It's not something like Coachella where they build it and you come and pay admission to experience it.
hmm
It's all participant driven and participant built. So Burning Man becomes the fourth largest city in Nevada for 10 days. 85,000 people show up, and it becomes the fourth largest city in Nevada. And if you it's not all about drugs.
hmm
The drugs obviously get reported on the most. It's the most fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But firefighters go to Burning Man to study how things burn. you know
Oh.
uh there's a post office at Burning Man. There's a kids camp at Burning Man. Just a full civilization. So what's great about Burning Man is you can choose the drugs that will serve you in the
hmm
given moment.
Yeah.
I've seen some really funny things at Burning Man, and I've seen some wild things at Burning Man, and it's definitely a great place to try whatever drug you're trying to try for the first time.
Is to try it there. I've never Burning Man is one thing that I've never been to, but I have been to I've been to like camping raves. It was called Further or Even Further. I went to a couple of those. Definitely not children friendly for any of those. But
Pretty
that's
progressive lifestyle to bring your kids to those things. I'm
yeah,
not saying
but
I'm against it. You know, I want people to raise their children how they see fit, but
yeah.
it's pretty progressive for my taste.
Yeah, even well, I mean, because obviously not everything is about drugs, but that's like when people go to that thing again, especially with the social stuff, they also probably just think it's like a bunch of hippies just doing a bunch of drugs or a bunch of crazy people doing a bunch of drugs. But yeah, it's obviously other stuff. I never knew that about Burning Man because I just assumed it was a place just to go do a bunch of drugs, but now I know that there's
Which
some
it is.
kids
It's a
there.
great place.
Yeah, it's a great place.
I don't want to discount drugs. Like it's certainly a great place to do drugs. I'll probably go to Burning Man and do drugs more than I'll study fire. So, you know, maybe that proves its point.
Or you could do drugs and study fire, which is something I like to
There
do
you go.
when I'm on drugs sometimes,
Yeah.
if there's a fire. Absolutely. So let's go back to growing up in Hollywood and the drug scene there, especially with like your friends and stuff like that. Do you know a lot of people like the Hollywood scene, especially like if it's like a child of a star or like a rock star, like are they put underneath like different social stigmas and do they tend to use more than let's say like just an average person living in Hollywood?
It's tough to say. You know, my parents, I think, did as good of a job as you could do, from a parenting handbook as
Mm-hmm.
far as keeping your how to keep your kids away from drugs. I think they did everything that you were supposed to do. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was a kid that grew up idolizing Motley Crue. You know, I grew up, you know, listening to a lot of that kind of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they were, you know, right in our backyard, obviously taking you to Still Panther,
Yeah.
you know, but you know, those type of like, it was only a matter of time before I checked in with myself and said, hey, there's a world out here that I'm not exploring, and I did it at a safe age. You know, I do look back and say, you know, if I had started dabbing in this stuff in high school when,
Mm-hmm.
you know, my brain's not yet developed, I'm not yet fully an adult,
Mm-hmm.
it could have been pretty crippling, right? And that's, you know, I think it all comes down to, in my opinion, less about how you're raised and more about your social circles.
Okay.
You know, I went to a private high school where you would think a private high school would protect people from drugs more. But when I went to a public high school after
Mm-hmm.
that private high school, most of my friends from the private high school ended up in rehab, all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
crazy shit. You know, they came for those rich families that you talk about.
Mhm.
And, you know, the public school kids who had nothing that it was already around them seemed to deal with it better. Uh,
Mhm.
and this is just my personal experience. It might, there's obviously not, I don't have data to back it up or anything, but
Mhm.
I do think it's all about who you surround yourself with and how that social circle or social pressure pushes you to try new things. And
Mhm.
what you think you're going to get out of those new things. You know, again, idolizing Motley Crue, being a naturally sexual person, I think drugs were for me, were always tethered to, you know, how's this going to help me get laid?
Yeah.
And the moment drugs started to, like, you know, the moment a drug starts preventing me from getting laid, I'm taking my foot off the gas, you know. So for me, it was never really a usage thing from I was chasing a high. It was more of
Mhm.
like, how can I get high and facilitate, you know, more love, more sex, and good times. So
Mhm.
as long as the sex, good times, and love and environment were flowing, that's what kept the drugs flowing for me. It wasn't so much, you know, I didn't I was never trying to use drugs to fill voids or
Mhm.
fill holes that I think become damaging for people, right? Like
Yeah, or
you
impress
start.
people, and which Hollywood is all about, impressing people
Mhm.
and stuff like that. Yeah, because I remember living there and meeting some children of celebrities who are just disasters of people. Unfortunately, it is because they're hanging out with other, socialites and stuff like that, and they feel very privileged, and their parents they'll be like, oh, we'll just put you in rehab, or they do try to shelter them from drugs and whatnot. And like you said, the rich families are like, oh, we don't have problems with drugs because we have money. And the kids in the public school, it's like, oh, well, we see this shit all the time, we don't really want to fuck with it, or if we do fuck with it, we know what the fuck we're doing. That's why it always happens where rich kids always end up in rehab or overdosing, where kids in public school know the amount that they should do and where to do it and stuff like that. There's definitely some perks to being on the wrong side of the track, so to speak.
Well,
You
I mean, yeah, I think when you're on the wrong side of the tracks, it's more of a sink or swim environment, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
like when the people that are swimming have found ways to combat those voids and combat the negative things in their life without
Mhm.
drugs, so that when they do drugs, it's not as detrimental of an impact. Whereas, like you mentioned, you shelter your kids and you prevent them from confronting problems in other ways other than drugs, and
Mhm.
they start using drugs to solve those problems. That's when you get that.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem.
Well, yeah, and then they see, mom having a glass of wine and popping a Xanax because she had a rough day shopping at Louis Vuitton. It's like, oh, this is how I
Terrible. I
solve.
know the feeling though. Shopping at Louis Vuitton can be rough.
I hate you. Yeah, that is they have I thought a really good movie that depicted that was it had Michael Douglas in it, not Julia Stiles, but the one that kind of looks like Julia Stiles. Was it called Traffic? It was called Traffic, if I'm not mistaken. Do you
Well,
remember?
I haven't seen that movie in a while.
But it was where like he was working for the president. He was actually like in control of like the drug administration or something, or the war on drugs, and then his daughter ends up, getting railed smoking crack in a crack house. It's a good movie, highly recommend it for everybody. It's older, definitely early 2000s. I wa-
I've seen a similar experience of
yeah.
someone getting railed on drugs. Like we were in Vegas for one of my birthdays, and
Hmm.
um, my friend, I'll refer to him as Slinky to preserve his identity. They're kind of like he's a professional dominatrix, so
Okay.
he's got this girl that's also promiscuous, and they meet this couple that is like really like calm and love, and they're just like, we want to try swinging for the first time. So I'm over there in the corner, drinking, having a good time. Walk in and
Hmm.
like, and they have convinced Slinky and his girlfriend that
Hmm.
they want to try swinging for the first time.
Yeah.
And it ended up in this poor boyfriend in the corner just crying his eyes out. And
Oh,
Slinky's girlfriend's over there like cuddling him
it's
like
okay.
there, while this guy's girlfriend's asking Slinky, "Fuck me in my ass harder, just fuck me in the ass harder." And so Molly has that kind of effect. Like and Slinky's girlfriend's like, "You just hurry the fuck up." I don't know how much I can keep this poor individual distracted while you finish, but yeah,
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, sometimes drugs do kind of will give you that like maybe Superman effect where it's like, oh, I could do this. And then once you're
moral of the story, try swinging before you do drugs
yeah,
separately,
there's
you know.
definitely don't do anything um don't do anything on drugs that you wouldn't do sober is kind of a good thing, but at the same time there's
Which isn't much for me.
yeah, then that's my problem too, is that I'm like, I would absolutely do this sober. But definitely for some people, yeah,
That's how we justify our mind, right? Would I do this sober? Oh yeah, totally, without a doubt.
yeah, absolutely. And then
I'm good at lying to myself. Of course.
right. And then when I am sober, well, I remember because I read this study that mushrooms can actually help you quit smoking cigarettes. And it wasn't a big study. I think there was like maybe 15, 17 people or something like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, I like mushrooms. I'm like, let me see if I could do some mushrooms and then focus on like not wanting to smoke cigarettes. I'm like, I could totally do this. That would be amazing for me because, like, consciously, I know that cigarettes are bad, but it's that little voice in the back of my head that's like, no, you need another one. So I took some mushrooms. I was walking around the city and I think because I was like, I don't need a cigarette, but I kept talking like, thinking about cigarettes that all I wanted to do was smoke cigarettes. So I ended up fucking smoking almost an entire pack of cigarettes on this mushroom trip that was meant to help me quit smoking.
Yeah, no, whenever I've done drugs, whether it be mushrooms, acid, Molly,
Mhm.
it's always accompanied by a nice cigarette. There's something about tobacco.
Mhm.
Tobacco just levels out your vision. It kind of like it really primes you for a nice high.
It really does.
It's definitely not a substitute by any means. It's a complimentary experience.
Yeah, it's like even drinking, like anytime I like, because I don't drink nearly as much as I used to, but when I do go out and drink, I tend to smoke more too, because like I live in a non-smoking building, so I maybe, smoke like 4 cigarettes a day, 4 or 5 cigarettes a day, which is a lot less than being able to smoke.
I don't even know how many cigarettes I'm smoking with these,
Oh yeah, like I
like these tiny
can't.
nicotine things. Like,
Yeah, I can't smoke with those, but when I go out drinking, I do tend to smoke more. I'm like, oh, like because they go well together. There's just certain drugs that I have to have a cigarette on. I'm just like, yes, cocaine, absolutely. If I don't have cigarettes, I'm not doing cocaine. But it's just not happening. It's just impossible. Those all three of those things go very, very well together.
I'll never forget. I was at this music festival, Desert Hearts, and I meet this guy, and he's like, and we're talking, we're vibing, and he's just like, man, like I've been to rehab for meth, I've been to rehab for heroin, and he's just listing all these hard drugs that he's been to
Hmm.
rehab. He's like, I'm clean, I'm off all that now. And he pulls out his jewel out of his pocket. He's like, but this motherfucking thing, I can't shake it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm looking, I'm like, I'm smoking mine, like out of everything you mentioned, you can't smoke, you can't quit the jewel, like as I'm puffing away. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I read multiple studies that it's actually harder to quit smoking cigarettes than it is to quit heroin or really any other drug. Again, the social stigma thing, but it's also because your brain, like you create this habit basically when you smoke. Especially with the jewels, you do it all the time now. I definitely couldn't do the jewels, but it's like when you wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, I wake up, I drink a glass of water. Like for me, I wake up, I drink a glass of water, wash my face, walk my dog, smoke a cigarette. After a meal, there's certain parts of my day I'm like, oh, it's my smoke break time. And like I don't even like I could be working and be fine, but I just look up at the clock at the exact same time within the same like 10 minutes, be like, oh, it's cigarette break time. It's like that little part of your brain. It's like, no, it's time. This is what we do. We got to keep doing it. And for some people, like it's really hard to like break that train of thought, that just repetitive behavior because it's daily. It's a consistent thing. So yeah, it's really hard. Like it's like I just started meditating regularly. I think I'm up to like 50 days in a row. I'm like, I wonder if I could keep this going, like I keep smoking going.
right, like there's an interesting book, I think it's called like Atomic Habits, that explain
Hmm.
why certain why good habits are harder to keep than bad habits,
Hmm. Yeah,
uh,
I read that book. Yeah, I was like, because I'm like, how do I quit smoking? And just like other little bad habits, and also how to train yourself to do like better habits, like meditating and stuff like that. And I believe they say if you do something, was it for like 20 days in a row, it does start creating that habit. So it is. But a lot of times creating healthy habits isn't fun.
no.
No, it's
No,
meditating.
yeah,
Meditating is not fun. Like I
no.
recently found out I have ADHD, and I'm like, oh, so it's like extra hard for me to meditate because when I'm sitting down, I'm like, don't think about anything, don't think about anything. Fuck, I thought about something. I'm like, oh my god, now I'm thinking about stuff, and it's just like, calm the
Time,
fuck
time, time to
down.
go take some more drugs.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story, you know.
You need more drugs constantly. Drugs do help though. I've never been big on pills, and I'd like to take every once in a while for anxiety. I have beta blockers because I'm not big on Xanax. I do have Xanax prescribed to me, but I don't like if I need help sleeping, I'll take a Xanax because that fucker will knock me out. But yeah, I like my beta blockers, which I guess just like kind of thin out your blood and slow down your heart. Super fun to drink on, by the way. You only need one cocktail and you are hammered. But they're great. Yeah, I like beta blockers. The Adderall, I have fucking Adderall prescribed to me, and I'm like, oh, so this is why, like, because it never like super fucked me up, and I'm like, I never figured out why. I'm like, oh, it's because I have ADHD. I'm an idiot when it comes with that. Have let's talk about your family. Were they ever like, are they big drinkers, or like have you ever talked to your dad about like smoking a joint or something like that? Like, could you see yourself ever smoking a joint with your parents?
Yeah, so I actually like smoked weed with my mom for the first time 2 years ago. So
Nice.
not not prevalent earlier in my life at all. They, like I said, they kept everything away from me. They kept everything.
Mm-hmm.
They kept everything. You know, my parents were never on pills. They
Mm-hmm.
were never smoking weed. If they were ever drinking, it was drinking wine. I don't think I've ever really seen them do shots or anything.
Yeah.
So like I said, like textbook how to parent your kids, do all these things, and hit them all.
Yeah, I mean, you
And
didn't
it
try drugs
doesn't.
until you're
Yeah,
20, so
it doesn't. You know, you don't always get the result that you think you're gonna get.
yeah. Well, that's because I know some kids with their parents, like my stepdad is still very anti-marijuana. Like still like so like drinking's fine. He'll drink all the time, but weed is very, very bad. But now my mother is retired and she's always liked smoking pot, and she really likes edibles now because it helps with like her arthritis, and like that does have the medicinal purposes and stuff like that. But I still have to like sneak her edibles. Like I send her edibles sometimes. Just like we can't tell, George, that we're doing this. I'm like, he still thinks this way. She's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, but your parents not like that. It'd be like, no. What about your dad? Do you think your dad would ever, has he ever smoked pot?
He's not a big fan. Makes him tired, just like it makes me tired.
Yeah.
You know, my dad's your typical wine and cigar guy.
Yeah. Well,
You
that's
know,
good. Yeah, some people are just like, no. And it is funny because a lot of times when people have tried certain things like pot and be like, no, it's just not for me, but they're not like against other people getting stoned. You know what I mean? Like, because there's a lot of people who have tried it and be like, oh, it was the worst experience I ever had. You should never do it. Or people are like, no, it just made me tired. I don't want to do it anymore, kind of thing. And if you want to do it, that's fine. But yeah, people are definitely more socially acceptable of drinking. But at least the marijuana thing is starting to loosen up a little bit here in the city. I know in California, I miss being able to just go to a fucking clinic or whatever and just buy it. It was so nice here. I mean, I have my medical license here, but yeah, that was a weird thing to get used to. I'd be like, fuck, I have to buy my drugs illegally again. And then my first apartment, I lived on the same floor as the fucking police commissioner, Ray Kelly, at the time. Just having pounds of weed sent to me.
speaking of weed, hold that thought. My delivery guy's at the door. I'll be right
Oh,
back.
okay.
Alarm. It was the other false alarm. It was the other drug dealer, Amazon. So no.
Oh, that is yeah, I am definitely addicted to that son of a bitch.
No.
Ooh, yeah, I've noticed like whenever I'm not doing other drugs, I tend to supplement my addiction habits for shopping for retarded things on. on Amazon. I have a bunch of crystals. I don't even know what the fuck to do with them. I just have crystals now.
Yeah,
Free
definitely
energy.
need a breathalyzer that locks your Amazon account.
Yes, like instead of like when you for driving or whatever, one of my
Yeah,
girlfriends actually had one of those. Actually, a couple of my girlfriends had those in their cars. One of our friends. Um, yeah, he actually had a bracelet. They had this weird like ankle bracelet that can test if like you're drinking alcohol, like it can sense it through your skin or whatever. I believe I'm not sure if I told this story yet on the podcast, but we were out in Vegas, and long story short, he thought that maybe if he just kept his foot in a bucket of water, the thing couldn't tell that he was drinking. But this is a man who comes from a very like old money rich, like
clearly the thing just thinks he's really hydrated.
yeah, just like old money rich. So just like family pays like off constantly all of the DUIs and stuff like that and serious alcohol problem. But yeah, would just had his foot in a bucket the entire time because he's a big poker player. Always played in the World Series of Poker. And yeah, no, it was able to tell that. Yeah, he was drunk. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. It was so good to like see you and talk with you. It's been I want to say since AVN Wars, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while. Also quarantine hasn't helped either. At all from like visiting and stuff. I got my first vaccination shot yesterday though, so I will be out. Yes. Don't worry about the fucking vaccine or what's in the vaccination shot. If you're listening to this podcast, like that's not something. You should be more worried about the McDonald's that you're eating than what's in the McRib. I had 3 since it came out, by the way.
Hopefully in 2023 we don't hear ads on the television that said if you took the COVID vaccine in 2020 you might be entitled to compensation.
Oh, when I went in, I forgot what I had asked her. Oh, I'm like, with the Pfizer or Moderna or whatever. And what did she say? Oh, I asked her, I'm like, how long do I have to wait till after I get the first one? Can I go get the second one? And she's like, honestly, we're just all guinea pigs right now. So she's like, we're giving everyone 3 weeks. And I was like, okay. And then I was reading the paperwork. They're like, not approved by the FDA. And I'm like, well, some of the stuff the FDA has approved, baby powder for one from Johnson and Johnson. I like how they have that shot. I'm like, no one's taking that shot.
Yeah,
Like
you brought
there's
it.
been jokes on Twitter where it's like, yeah, they couldn't even do baby powder right. You can't, no.
Yeah, you brought up the AVN, so I'll leave you with a little story from my
Okay.
last time there. So I'm going down the elevator. This is
Mm-hmm.
like, you know how they have that circle bar,
Mm-hmm.
like a
Circle
lot of
bar.
got rest in peace, Hard Rock Hotel. You know, never gonna see that place again. But I think Virgin.
Yeah.
But so anyway, they have the circle bar at the bottom of the hotel. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
conjugate there. That's like, you
The
know,
circle bar. Yeah, that we meet at the
yeah,
circle
I think
bar.
it's called the circle bar. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go downstairs, interact with all my porn friends at the
Mm-hmm.
circle bar.
Yeah.
And like, so I'm going down the elevator and I run into this porn star that I had jerked off to probably a billion times as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just finally see I see her in real life. I'm like, oh my God, that's what that has to be her. And I'm with a couple of my friends and they're kind of doing the kind of like, hey, we're gonna go back up to Mike's room and party. I'm like, we are? Okay. I was like, no, they were going down to Circle Bar. They're like, shh. There's
Yeah.
always a party back up at your room. So we go back up to the room and I'm like, okay, like this might be my chance to actually, like sleep with this woman that I have been jerking off to my entire life.
Jesus.
And so she goes, do you want to do some blow? I'm like, oh yeah, of course I want to do blow. Absolutely. Remember, and it's drugs that lead to sex, drugs that lead
Mm-hmm.
to love. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do blow. And so she's like, so we're racking up lines, whatnot. And like,
Mm-hmm.
she had like these fingernails that were like maybe like an inch and a half long. So they were already good shovels for just
Yeah.
getting into the bag. So like I'm racking up lines that are like gator size. She's shoveling with like these giant fingernails, like coat
Yeah.
of our nose. So like 5-10 minutes goes by and she goes, what did you give me? And I'm like, I've been doing the same shit you did.
Yeah.
Like we're in this together. She's like, no, that wasn't blow. I was like, it was blow. Don't worry, it was totally blow. And as soon as I say it was blow, my friend goes, has anybody seen my K?
Oh
And I was
no.
and like as soon as he said that, as soon as that happened, like I started like it's just the world starts like spinning. Like I start
Mm-hmm.
morphing into this like
The
frame.
wall.
There's like the walls are collapsing in. I look over there. She's like paralyzed, like in some weird position. She kind of like had like T-Rex arms, like she couldn't fucking move. And like I swear to God, we must have fucking just like it was such an odd experience because it was like almost like I thought I was dying, but I was
Mm-hmm.
okay. I was totally content and relaxed with dying. Like I was just like, oh, this is
You're like,
perfect.
this is what's happening now.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is. It was like maybe it's like meditating for 50 days in a row and then dying while you're meditating. You're just like, oh, this is. I'm present with this death. You
Yeah.
know, exactly the way it's supposed to be. And that was wild. Like we must have been like frozen, not able to move for like 45 minutes to an
In a
hour
K-hole.
in the K hole. So if you're gonna get your dosage right and try to try to have sex with someone that you're interested in, make sure you get your K dosage right. But if you do get your K dosage right, K is a great drug.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, if you do it a little bit, like in moderation. I've always did it more, but there's
yeah.
one or two times where it's just like I small bumps and I'm like, okay, it's not that.
We created something at Burning Man called ketamolocane,
Oh, jeez.
and it's essentially 30% K,
Hmm.
30% Molly, 30% cocaine, and it's ingenious actually because the first thing you're gonna
Hmm.
get is you're gonna get that immediate adrenaline rush from the blow.
Yeah.
Like you mix all these three things up together, you crush it up. So it's like a great line. And then the first thing you're gonna get, you hit with that blow, energy boost. Then for about 15 minutes, you kind of get that spacey K feeling. You're kind of, you're relaxed, you're energized, but you're relaxed. Right
Hmm.
at past the 45-minute mark, you're rolling. So it's a stack one after the other. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I experiment with my drugs. I do small dosage, but I like to pair them with different things. One thing I've been
Hmm.
really interested in recently is because I don't really like drinking that much anymore. It doesn't have a healthy benefit
Yeah.
for me. Just like cocaine, I also got off cocaine just because there's
Yeah.
much of a medicinal benefit, but I've been really playing around with GHB and small K bumps, and
Okay.
it's very 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 interesting for like your sex drive and your just overall energy well being.
Hmm.
Obviously, you can't drink doing GHB, and you should
Yeah. Yeah. My girl used to
take that with a grain of take that with a grain of salt. But and
yeah,
obviously consult your doctor before you do anything. But
the
that
GHB can definitely be I've
when
definitely
you mix
thrown up
small
on
things
it.
and you start with small dosage.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
with that. Yeah, my girl used to yeah, she wasn't a big drinker. She did like cocaine, but she would have GHB and she just do like little drops. She had like a little droplet and would just do like a little bit here, throughout the night or whatever. She really liked it, but she would only do a little bit. Um Normally if I'm doing, especially when I was younger, if I was doing drugs, I was doing them to get fucking annihilated. I was trying to fill some void, all of the holes. I was trying to fill all of the holes
All
and
the
stuff.
holes at once. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's more like, oh, this is fun. This past summer I definitely did more cocaine than I normally have being in quarantine and stuff like that. But yeah, because that's one of my favorite ones. I'm like, I need to stay away from that one because I like it, and that is trouble. Anything I like is trouble. Where can people find you? Or find some of your OnlyFans models and stuff?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You can find me on Instagram. So only Quarren King. So instead of the TING in quarantine, it's King. So only Quarren King with 2 underscores at the end. My OnlyFans is just free for fun. So come follow it for free. And then my models, you can connect with them there as well and subscribe to their pages.
which is awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, sir. It's always good
Happy
to
to be here
see you.
anytime.
And hopefully I will get to see you sometime this year because I do plan on coming out to LA. Me and my girlfriend are going to do a little apartment swap, and I'll be vaccinated. I got all my shots.
Yeah,
So
you're allowed to congregate now.
I am so I know I like how I read the CDC said it's like, yes, people who are vaccinated can group together. It's like, yeah, no shit. That's why we got fucking vaccinated.
Yeah,
Is so we
that's
can
why I put
hang
the
out
same
in
one.
groups. I didn't get the shot just for funsies, okay? Like I want to talk to fucking I hate people, but I miss them so much. I miss the fucking bum on 4th Street that I would give cigarettes to all the time. Like I miss people I hate like that. That's how much I miss people. I'm like, I
Yeah.
miss hating someone in their face, not just online.
So you're telling me you're not doing Pfizer? You're not getting high on Pfizer?
Oh, I got high on Pfizer yesterday, baby. I
Oh.
still feel it. I still feel it. It's
You're
a
getting
little sore.
you're getting Pfizer.
The Pfizer. All right. Well, thanks, babe. Bye.
All right, ciao.